Alright, so in this video, I'm going to talk about my most recent my rheumatologist visit. So in this visit, I just recently got my PFT, that's my pulmonary function test, back. And at this point, it's at 65% compared to a normal person. So I believe I go to the appointment, I sit there for a while, and I strongly suggest you bring a piece of paper with you, a pad, some sort of book or something to write in, so that you can take notes as you are speaking with your doctor and their underling. So I go in there and I speak to this rheumatologist underling, and there's a discussion about how I've been feeling, what's been going on, and she is writing down a few things. And I go over a few things I've already spoken with my rheumatologist my last appointment, probably about 3 or 4 months prior. One of them is I'm having an issue with my eye, where it gets blurry. And I think it's blurry for a few seconds, up to about a minute, but I would err on the side of a shorter time than a minute. And I tell her that I've gone to my primary care physician, and they recommend I go see an ophthalmologist, and I do. The person there, the ophthalmologist, tells me that I have probably likely experiencing something called optic migraine. I don't know I think that's what the word is, optic migraine. So that's what's going on. She asked, when did this start? And I said, this has happened for a while. It used to do that when my blood pressure was high. Now that's how I know, and I check my blood pressure. But now it's doing it, and my blood pressure is fine. And I don't know why it's doing that, but that's what I was told, that it's just the optic migraine. But there's no pain with it. Basically, don't worry about it. It's not a problem. I also tell her that I have been having issues with numbness in my hands. This is something else I've also discussed with my rheumatologist, and so he's aware of that. But anyway, I tell her, and she says basically what's going on. I tell her I have some numbness in my fingers, and I've said beforehand this numbness can be in the tips and goes all the way up down a ways on the fingers. It's not that they're blue, it just they're numb. I don't feel any pins and needles in it. They're just numb. For some reason I've lost sensation in them, and it's in both hands. I don't feel like any pins and needles when it comes to let's say a diabetic or something, or if you slept in it for too long. I'm not feeling that. So I tell her that, and she says that there is some kind of study, was an electrical study where they check to see the stimulation in your fingers and the nerves. I think it's called a nerve conduction study, and she suggests it. And I said, I already talked to the doctor already. He already suggested that. From what I know, he said it requires a lot of needles, or it has needles in it. And from what I've done online personally when I researched it, that's true. So I tell her I'm not really interested in doing that, and she's like, well, I don't want to make you do anything that you're not comfortable with. But that is available. The next thing I tell her is that my arm's shaking. And for me, I'm just saying right now, it's either my hand or my arm. And I tell her sometimes it happens when I'm getting off the table, or if I'm, I don't know if I told her if it's walking downstairs, but I know what I'm getting from a table. And I tell her, I keep thinking, am I doing this? Is it me overthinking it? I don't know if there's something to worry about or not. So I told her I'd bring it up with my primary care physician, and she said, you're probably just really tired, or you're low in sugar. She didn't worry about that. So she just kind of brushed it off. And the woman I'm speaking to stated, we've not given you anything that could do this. And I'm not sure what part she said that at when I was describing these 3 different issues with her. We've not given you anything that would do that. And the stuff that you're describing suggests it's neurological. And my eyes are big. And she says that we'll keep an eye on that. So at that point, she gathers all the information. She has a notepad with her, or like a little fold over paper, and she is going to go talk to the doctor, the rheumatologist, and they'll be back later. Later on, a woman comes in, and I find out that she's trying to push a study, because they will always try push a study. I'm just letting you know that. So she's trying to push this study that has to do with one of my symptoms that I have. And I tell her frankly that I listen to her spiel. She gives me some paperwork, and I'm like, I'm not interested in this. In fact, I'm not interested in doing any more studies with the university. And she gets kind of upset because she's like, well, I'm sorry, but I told her that something happened during one of my visits there when I was in the hospital that I am to the point where I'm not interested in doing any more studies. And my relative got really upset about it once they heard about it. And she says, well, I'm sorry that happened. I'm sure she got upset, but this hurts other researchers. They're just trying to help like that. And so she says, well, I don't want to bother you or anything. So she says, go ahead and give me the paper back and I won't bother you with this. Anyway, I gave that paper back to her. She leaves. And then finally the rheumatologist comes in with the underling, the young woman who was speaking to me. He tells me that my oxygen is stable. But the first thing he leads with is, I heard you won't do any more studies, that you're not interested in doing more studies. And I say, yep, something happened. I'm not sure if he led with that or not, but let me just keep going. Let's skip that part because I'll get back to it later. So he tells me my lungs are fine. I mean, well, they're stable, 65%. He's also discussing a few other things with me. We're going to set up an appointment in 4 months. I did learn from the underling that apparently there's 2 ways that scleroderma can work, at least the diffuse kind that I have. And I wasn't aware of this. It can do 2 things. It can, 1, mess with you for a while, let's say like a year's time, and then kind of backs off. Or continue going slowly. And I did not know that could happen. So I'm aware of that now. Anyway, we're discussing our things here, and he brings up the part where they know they take a look at my legs, and they're going through the scoring system. Apparently she scored the skin, and he's teaching her, hey, this is what I would give a score of, this is what I would give a score of, blah blah. And they get to my legs, and I tell them that I'm having issues where I'm scratching a lot. And as you can see, I don't know if you can see it here, but I'm scratching on my arm, and it's gotten so bad that you see a mark. It's not very good lighting, but you see that there's a difference, and it's kind of leathery. And I'm having something similar happen to my legs, and I can't stop scratching. The deal is, they asked, are you on your medication? I said, yes, I am. Are you taking the full dose? Yes, I am. They didn't ask how many times that I had to watch it because I had infections. And if you have an infection on this medication, you need to be off the dose until the infection is cleared. And I've had several because I wouldn't stop scratching. And the guy asked, is this anxiety? I said, no, it isn't. It's just so itchy. And I tell you this, in my sleep study, in an odd environment that I was, totally new to, I never scratched. Anyway, going back to the rheumatology visit, he decides to give me a medication. I can't think of the name it is right now, but I'm going to write it down in the comments so that if you're still scratching, even though you're on your medication, you can ask about this type of medication, because apparently this is supposed to be something where it can stop histamine or something. I believe it tampers it down. And I've taken the medication so far. The first day I got the medication, had the tiniest little urge to scratch, and it was not to the point where I really had to go. I had to do it. Risk of infection didn't matter. I had to do it. It got so bad. That medication is excellent, and I'm upset that my PCP, my primary care physician, let me walk in, and the nurses there let me walk in time after time with infections that they know could possibly gotten worse, and never suggested this medication to me. All he did was like this, suggested it works. And I'll be putting that down in the comments so that you're aware of that as well. But we get to a situation we get to a discussion why I'm not interested in doing more studies at the university. And we get into a very frank discussion about what happened. He asked me, why didn't I report it? Why didn't you say anything? I understand that it's his line of questioning, but it felt like he was blaming me. I told him I didn't know. I told him what happened. And I told him this is the dates and all that stuff. And I told him the procedure that would have occurred when this happened. And he said, you are responsible for making sure that if you feel, no, he didn't say you're responsible. He said, if you are uncomfortable in a situation, then you need to speak up. You need to say something. You can always stop it. It's up to you. You can do that. I tell him the dates, and I'm talking to him, and he turns to his assistant and says, check to see, I guess, look for this kind of study or something, or look for this date. And they find it. And I told them the person who did it was likely the person that signed off on that study. He kept staring at me. He does this all the time. And I'm like, what the heck, dude? I keep my composure. And we keep talking, saying, well, I had some options for you for clinical trials. And I said I would have volunteered for it. Prior to this happening, I would have volunteered for it because I would want to make sure that I am trying to be aggressive and trying to make sure that I stay in a good place where I can support myself. That things are not taking a bad turn. That's what I'm looking at. So he tells me, he tells the assistant, put her on the wait list. And I believe it was for something with a lung. My lung doctor, my pulmonologist, never offered me a study when I explicitly said to his underling that I'd be interested. Now, the rheumatologist was like, look, from what I got from remember, it's basically when you get worse, basically when because right now you're steady, so there's nothing for you right now. But when it starts to decline, I believe that's what they're going to do, from what my understanding is. So right now, from what I know, I'm on a wait list for clinical trials. And I am thankful to him for two things. One, for actually doing that. I don't care if it's a wait list, because the other one wouldn't give me the time of day. And that person, I believe, is very involved in clinical trials. And he may not think that I'm at the point where I need to be involved, but there's no action being taken, and I'm at 65%. And I would like to not slow down any worse or get worse from that. The second thing I'm thankful to him for, my rheumatologist, is that he prescribed me a drug to stop the itching. And that's when my PCP never stepped in. I could risk an infection. It could risk slow healing and something worse. If it gets infected, you got to be real good at making sure that your wounds are wrapped up and they're taken care of all the time. And I kept doing it because I had to scratch. And I'm sure my doctor, my PCP, was actually aware of this. I'm sure that she could have done something and nothing was done. So I'm very disappointed in that. So he ends up, telling me he's going to do that, and then I forgot what else, and he ends up walking away. But I'll tell you now, he's intent and staring you in the eye. I'm like, what the heck, dude? I can laugh about it now, but I was looking down. I was like, what are you trying to do? Intimidate me or what? But so far the guy's proven to be pretty good and thorough. So at this point, I'll just take that and just say it's a coinky dink. That's just what it is. Um, I want to tell you that if you're ever in a situation where you are uncomfortable, when people tell you it's something that you need to report, that you need to say something about it, it is very hard to do that in that situation. I will talk more about that later in my next video.